Drama bin drama, Arab drama, ole drama, Nyar drama, Said drama, zote pamoja. Yeah. Folks, it is happening. And it is happening so fast that it is possible many Kenyans still don't know. Many Kenyans still have not seen the implosion that is unfolding within the ruling party in Kenya. What? My sincere apologies. I even forgot to do a proper introduction to this very information-packed, interesting, popcorn show that I have for you today. I Safaricom, tayarisha your popcorn. Tunahitaji nyingi leo. Now I know some of you may find this strange, a popcorn show when our economy is just heading south very fast. There is so much suffering in Kenya. Why a popcorn show? Well, what is the option? Dejection, sadness, depression? No way. We on this channel are not giving up. Yeah, we are doing something about our circumstances. More on that later. But for now, let's get down into serious business of the political kind. What do I mean by implosion within UDA? Is Kumekucha Chris exaggerating the situation? Or what is the true picture? Now, I took my time over the weekend to research this much more deeply. Yeah. And indeed, I gave a heads up to our members on our Telegram page. Instead of doing an immediate video, instead of giving you something half-baked, and with the real danger of ending up with something that will not stand the test of time. Now, there are very many things happening in the Rift Valley, which in my opinion is clear evidence that UDA, the support of President Ruto within the Rift Valley, is crumbling, and crumbling very fast. But most Kenyans are focused on the remarks at a funeral over the weekend of former Nandi Hills legislator Alfred Keter, which received wild cheers. Yeah, his speech at that funeral, which received wild cheers from those in attendance, most of them from the region. That is what has really excited Kenyans. But you see, there are a lot of other things which have been happening in rapid succession in the Rift Valley that prove without doubt that William Ruto has a problem right in his own backyard. And it is not a small problem. It is serious. And I want us to start by understanding where this problem came from, because the seeds for it were planted a long time ago. What is unfolding right now is the harvest. The harvest of what was planted. And bila kizungu mingi, let me spell out what the problem was in the Rift Valley that is coming back to haunt William Ruto terribly. And it was the decision, not a wise political decision, of sidelining, or shall I say rigging out, some popular candidates within the Rift Valley in favor of preferred candidates. And the story of the Nandi Hills elections in 2022 illustrates this perfectly. Alfred Keter, of course, won the UDA nominations for Nandi Hills. Emphatically, it was clear that he was the most popular candidate on the ground. But everybody knew that the UDA High Command had a preferred candidate, a man called Keter. And so, it did not surprise most of us when after that nomination, Alfred Keter's nomination certificate vanished. It was nowhere to be found. Nobody knew where it was. Shortly after that, the loser of those primaries, Keter, contested the results with the UDA High Command. You can guess what happened next. Alfred Keter's victory was overturned, and Bernard Keter was declared the UDA candidate for the Nandi Hills seat. Keter contested as an independent, and the final election results for that seat are very instructive. The winner, in quotes, Bwana Bernard Keter, garnered 23,503 votes. Alfred Keter got 18,037 votes. Now already you can see that is very close. And it also tells us something else. It tells us that indeed Alfred Keter is still very popular. This is before you bring in the other developing factors. And so the headlines on social media and indeed in the newspapers that Alfred Keter is back is not correct. Okay? Hakuna mali alienda. You know, for you to come back, it means that you disappeared somewhere. There is nowhere Keter went. He remains even now very popular. Indeed, the most popular politician, well beyond his Nandi Hills constituency, is very popular right across the Rift Valley. And that is the truth. Now, one of the reasons why Keter was not a preferred candidate is because Keter is the kind of politician who echoes what the people are saying, what the people on the ground are saying, okay? As opposed to the politician who toes the line of the leaders of the party. The kind of MPs who repeat like a parrot what they've been told to say. Keter is not like that. Keter feels what the people are going through, and he normally speaks it out clearly and without fear. This is important to note so that we understand what Keter was saying are not what he feels personally. This is not a case of a politician with sour grapes over losing the last elections. No, he is echoing exactly how people are talking on the ground. At one very dramatic juncture of his speech over the weekend at the funeral, Keter told the UDA High Command to stop threatening people, telling them that they should not speak because they're in government. Keter requested the UDA High Command to show him, after the funeral, the petrol station reserved for those in government and those reserved for those in the opposition. Nakwambia, kimeumana kuumana. Now you know one very clear weakness of the Ruto presidency that is emerging is this thing of not thinking through your decisions. For example, when you start interfering with primaries because you want certain people elected, you want other people out, even if they are popular, and even at the appointment stage, when you make all these decisions and you don't try to be like a giraffe, as you should be as a leader, to see into the future, what is going to happen, what is bound to go wrong, then as a leader you're in serious trouble. I can't resist a quick aside here to illustrate this further. You appoint Moses Kuria as your cabinet secretary for trade. And yet trade is an important component, very, very critical component in your agenda. And you know Moses Kuria. And so barely a year later, after making this appointment, you go for an important meeting in the United States of America, and you're forced to introduce somebody else as your trade CS. Somebody who understands these things better, somebody who's experienced in negotiations, somebody who's got a lot of experience in the corporate world, and therefore will be very useful in helping you achieve what you want to achieve out of this meeting in the US. That is another classic example. Back to Keter. It is very clear that Bwana Keter cannot be silenced. And indeed he evokes memories of another politician, because you see the Nandi Hills constituency was carved out of the older Tinderet constituency. Keter reminds me very much of a former legislator of Tinderet constituency. Indeed, a great son of Kenya, a man called Jean-Marie Seroney, a very patriotic, great Kenyan, unsung hero of the motherland. Seroney never feared to speak his mind, just like Keter. Indeed, this man was in Lancaster House during the negotiations for Kenya's independence in 1963. And there's something else not many Kenyans know about. Jean-Marie Seroney holds the distinction as being the second black African Kenyan to qualify as a lawyer. Okay? And he qualified on 7th February 1956. Of course, the first was a man called Agwins Kodek. Yeah, I've covered him extensively on this channel in other videos. Seroney passed on 6th December 1982. Now, of course, you know 1982 was the year of the coup. A very chaotic year politically in the country called Kenya. And you know, Seroney was disliked by former President Moi. Indeed, Moi hated him for the same reasons that Keter is hated today. He was too popular on the ground. But sadly, Seroney had an even more powerful enemy in President Jomo Kenyatta at the time. And he got into serious trouble. You know, Jomo Kenyatta adjourned Parliament, stopped Parliament from sitting. Yeah, in those days, the president used to have that power under the old constitution. He stopped parliamentary sittings in order to frustrate the election of Seroney as deputy speaker. And still it didn't work. I'm telling you, in those days, we had real men in Parliament. Not like these days. And so when Parliament reconvened on 5th February 1975, Seroney was still elected the speaker. But he lasted only a few months, because he was detained without trial on 15th October 1975. And super fascinating, he was detained for the 4 words you see on your screens right now. You see another legislator, another famous one, a man called Martin Shikuku, had said Kanu is dead. Of course, the implication was that the executive had taken over everything. There was no political party as such. The executive gave orders, and everybody in the political class followed those orders to the letter. Or else, that is what Shikuku was saying. And Seroney, who was on the speaker's chair, responded by saying that there was no need to substantiate the obvious. That's what got him into detention without trial for 3 years and 2 months. Indeed, he was released by presidential pardon by President Moi, who had taken over by then, on 12th December 1978, alongside some other very big names who were in detention at the time, like Ngugi wa Thiong'o, Martin Shikuku, of course, and many others. And indeed, he was released just on time for the 1979 general elections. But he was frustrated, rigged out, just like Alfred Keter currently. Now, you know, Seroney never talked to anybody about what he suffered when he was in detention. But it was a horror story. Regulars on this channel will remember the story I told you about my political lecturer on a police air wing flight from Mombasa to Nairobi that stopped over at Manyani prison. Yeah, that's where Seroney and Shikuku and the other detainees were at the time. And you'll remember I told you the story about how my political lecturer saw Shikuku being brought into the aircraft. I believe he was being taken for treatment, and he could hardly walk. And yet he walked into detention with his own 2 feet. So what did they do to him? And Seroney was in the same detention. Anyway, finally, they got rid of Seroney. Yeah, they murdered him. That is what most people believe. although the man was also suffering from depression because he had taken a loan to buy a farm in the early 1980s. And the interest on this loan did not stop accumulating when he was in detention. And therefore the bank ended up repossessing his farm towards the end of his life. And today, where the house of this gallant Kenyan was, is a school. And his grave is the playground. Oh boy. That is how we Kenyans treat our heroes. Anyway, you can now see why Alfred Keter reminds me so much of Jean-Marie Sorone, this very great Kenyan, unsung hero of the motherland. So, as a president, how do you rule when your own backyard are up in arms against you? When your own people in your village don't want you? How do you continue ruling in those circumstances? Please educate me. Make me understand how that happens anywhere in the world. Because this is politics. And there are some rules in politics that you cannot change. You cannot reinvent. How? How do you reinvent them? In my opinion, this further confirms what I've said in earlier videos. The presidency of William Ruto, kwisha maneno. It is only a matter of time now. Okay? You see, one of those golden rules in politics is that you should never, ever touch the pockets of your constituents. Never ever. And this applies anywhere in the world. You know, former US President Bill Clinton created the impression that he was supporting some new taxation. Note carefully, he was not aggressively introducing it or aggressively supporting it. No! The perception was created that he had no problem with those new taxes. Do you know what happened to him? He was promptly voted out in the United States. Folks, you cannot rewrite the rules. You can't. How? To be clear, when historians finally sit down to write the history of the Ruto presidency, they will not say it was brought down by Raila Amolo Odinga. No. They will very clearly tell future generations, huyu mtu alimalizwa na kitu inaitwa taxes. By the way, I would like to make a very strong recommendation. You see, former governor of Laikipia, Nderitu Murithi, broke down the numbers for us and gave us a very clear analysis of where the country called Kenya is. In the Azimio scorecard presented over the weekend concerning the Ruto administration first year performance. You know, His Excellency Murithi, former governor of Laikipia, is a nephew of Mwai Kibaki, the late Mwai Kibaki, who was a world-renowned economist. But former Governor Murithi totally impressed me because he did something I never saw Kibaki do. Break down complicated economics into something so simple. A grade 2 child can understand it. I've put a link to that video in the description area below. Make sure you catch it. Because in his breaking it down, he made it so clear. And a lot of these things he was talking about may affect you individually in the particular business you're doing or in the particular industry you're in, and give you that insight that may give you an idea of how to think differently and survive through these hard times. I'm really pushing that idea on this channel. I don't want us just to criticize the government, and we're doing nothing for ourselves. Because believe it or not, even in all this chaos, there are many, many opportunities you can grab and make things better for you and your family. I know some of you don't believe me. Yeah, but trust me, it is possible. Let me just illustrate that with a very short clip. Less than a minute. Let's continue the politics. But I would strongly recommend that you reserve at least 1 hour or 30 minutes every day to think through your situation, especially your financial situation, and try and get insights and ideas on how you can survive by grabbing opportunities that always emerge in this kind of financial chaos. Of course, I believe it will be a great help for you if you take in my sets of videos, how to thrive or even prosper in a dead economy. You can see details on your screens right now. Only $39. And I promise you, that will be the best ever $39 investment, or Kenya shillings 3,900, you have ever made in your entire life. Yeah, apart from the sets of videos, there are 3 ebooks that will help you to focus so that you know exactly what you need to do in order to get ahead, end up right at the top when this crisis blows over. Yeah, and unfortunately, it's not going to blow over as quickly as most of us would want it to do. These things normally take years before the situation is finally back to normal, let alone booming. So please, let's face the reality. It is bad, but it is the reality. Let's not bury our heads in the sand. Let us face it head on and recognize it for what it is. We are also seeing a lot of evidence of infighting within UDA. Do you remember a politician called Alice Wahome? She has been lying low like an envelope. Why? What is the problem? Well, it could be the infighting going on in her docket in the Water, Sanitation and Irrigation Ministry. Do you know what her permanent secretary, a man called Kiprono Rono, did the other day? He wrote an official letter, copied that letter to the anti-corruption agency, copied that letter to other people. Imagine you're writing to your boss and then you copy the letter to other people. Kwani wewe nani? What? Anyway, they are fighting over the firing or not firing of a CEO called Bwana Twitter. And this battle between the CS and her PS is brutal. It is vicious. You see, most PSs hail from the Rift Valley. Yeah, that's not a secret. That's not breaking news. And it seems that what is happening in a lot of these dockets is that the CSs, if they're not from the Rift Valley, are faced with a decision to make. Either toe the line of your PS, who is supposed to be under you, either toe their line or get into trouble. There are people who have even been fired, oh yes, for getting it wrong. While it is very clear, the person from the Rift Valley, whatever rank or position they hold, is the boss. Get that into your head if you want to survive. But Madam Alice Wahome is a fighter. She's not taking it lying down. No way. And so the question we have to ask ourselves, how long will she survive? Will she survive at all? Well, time will tell. But this is the problem within the government. There are too many tough wars. And it is very easy to identify the people involved in these battles. It is Rift Valley versus the rest. That's what it really is. So in that kind of scenario, how long can this government survive? How long can this administration survive? And yet we know, words of wisdom, a kingdom divided against itself cannot stand. Folks, this implosion of UDA and Kenya Kwanza is very real. Very, very real. Until next time, this is Chris Kumekucha.